So I'd like to introduce you to Darla Simpson, who's our speaker today to talk about the Strata Energy Advisor program. I just want to mention that Darla has been a great advocate for you as Strata owners. The years that she's put in leading up to the launch of this program in November. So thank you so much, Darla. And I'm just going to turn it over to you now to introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Wendy. So as Wendy said, I've been working on the Strata Energy Advisor program since 2017. I had the pleasure of helping to develop the pilot program and then reimagine the program for broader applications. And now I'm very happy to be bringing it to you today in its newest form as the Strata Energy Advisor program. Just a little bit about me. I've had about 25 years of experience working in this intersection of buildings, energy, and climate change, and specifically working with people to make good decisions about their buildings. So I've done that in a program perspective and an advocacy perspective, and I even spent 10 years inside an engineering firm as a non-engineer. So I do have a little bit of technical background, but I'm going to caution you, I'm not going to be able to answer technical questions today. I can answer general questions, but if you have specific questions about your building or want to get into some details, I'll encourage you to reach out to us and I can put you in touch with one of our technical staff. So I'm just going to share my presentation here. So just a little bit about us. So the Zero Emissions Innovation Centre is a nonprofit charitable organization. We're part of the LC3 network that's supported by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And our mandate is to support and accelerate climate change across Metro Vancouver and beyond. So although we're based in Metro, we work provincially. And we have a number of programs that you may have heard of, including the Zero Emissions Building Exchange, which is the hub for zero emissions buildings, or ZEBEX. We have the Building to Electrification Coalition. We have the Sustainable Workforce Coalition. And then we have the BC Retrofit Accelerator, which is the program that I head up. So the BC Retrofit Accelerator is really an umbrella for a number of different initiatives that are about supporting a smooth transition of existing buildings to net zero in alignment with provincial and local climate action targets. And so there's a number of partners that we have under that. For commercial buildings, we work with BOMA BC. For nonprofit housing, we work with BC Nonprofit Housing Association and the Aboriginal Housing Management Association. Market rentals with Landlord BC, and then the residential strata program that we deliver that one directly, but we have worked very closely with the Condominium Homeowners Association to develop and refine that. So really trying to support all different kinds of building owner types, but recognizing that there is unique challenges and opportunities even in each of those sectors, even if the technical solutions might be the same. So Strata Energy Advisor program. My goal for you today is to really help you understand if this is the right project or right program for you, if it's something that you might want to sign up for, and is it a good fit for your building? So what is the purpose of the program? Why do we offer it? In BC, buildings represent somewhere between 25 and 60% of emissions in urban areas, and low carbon buildings are an important part of meeting our overall climate action targets. Our new term for it is multi-solving. But we also recognize that when you're planning a replacement project in your building, energy isn't the only thing that you can be thinking about. You can be adding cooling, you can be improving ventilation, you could be protecting residents with health concerns. So there can be a lot of different reasons to undertake these projects and a lot of co-benefits to undertaking a really well-planned replacement project. And then finally, we're quite interested in accelerating adoption across British Columbia, and we have partners working across Canada, but helping to reduce the complexity of these decisions, helping stratas to make informed decisions about really big expenditures in a lot of cases, and improving overall project outcomes, particularly if you're taking on something that isn't just a remove and replace sort of a project. And you know this, but I always think it bears repeating that, roughly 24% of British Columbians live in condo-style strata buildings. But to date, there's been very little support for them to plan for and enact energy efficiency or climate action targets in their buildings. So we're really excited to be able to bring this to market. But That's why we are here. That's not necessarily why you're here. So what we're hearing from stratas is, yes, sometimes they're interested in reducing their carbon emissions. Sometimes they have kind of, a green champion in the building, but more often they've got an upcoming retrofit project. They know they've got options, but they don't really know what the implications of those options are. So they're coming to us for some questions, some clarity. Maybe they're getting lots of requests for heat pumps because residents want to add cooling or improve air quality. They might be looking to improve their efficiency, get ahead of some of the reporting or regulations that are starting to come out in the large buildings in the city of Vancouver in particular. Some of them are interested in maintaining property values as we move to higher levels of step code and new construction. We want to keep up our existing building stock to those same standards, particularly where they're providing additional services like, better noise control with these better insulated buildings or better windows. And then always to keep operational costs low. Nobody likes paying utility bills, and nobody wants to spend money they don't have to. So there can be a lot of reasons for getting involved, and there could be a lot of benefits. Again, many different co-benefits to pursuing a project that's low carbon, but also resolving other challenges in the building. So who's eligible? So the program is available across British Columbia. You must be in a multi-unit residential building, so a condo building. So unfortunately, ground-oriented stratas aren't eligible. So those are townhomes, duplex, triplex, stacked townhomes. Basically, you have to have a shared entrance and hallway to be an eligible building. In addition to that, you must be 4 or more stories above ground or have a floor plate of 600 meters squared. That's roughly 30 units, but it does depend on the size of your units. And this is just a limitation of our funding right now, unfortunately. If any of this is like, I don't know how big my building is, I'm a little bit, on the fence, go ahead and register for the program. If your building is kind of one that's maybe on the borderline, one of our staff will review it. They'll determine whether or not your building is eligible, and they'll get back to you directly. So in addition to those size requirements, you do have to have an upcoming end of life replacement. So ideally, the boiler didn't fail last week. You've got a little time to plan, but a project coming forward in, say, the next 2 or 3 years in your building. And we also need you to have natural gas for heating, hot water, ventilation, or fireplaces, and be interested in electrifying one or more of those systems, because this program is funded through Natural Resources Canada, through Metro Vancouver, the Roadberg Foundation, and the Zero Emissions Innovation Centre. So we have a number of different funding sources, but they are all looking to support significant GHG reductions in the buildings. So that's where the kind of eligibility criteria come from. I will say that we're very fortunate in the City of Victoria and District of Saanich to have additional funding through those municipalities. So if you happen to live in either of those communities, we can accept buildings as small as 5 units. And we can work with buildings that are interested in switching from electric baseboard heating to heat pumps. So that's in Victoria and Saanich. If you aren't currently eligible, we do encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. We will be sending out occasional updates about any changes to our program or program eligibility, but we'll also send notifications about other programs that might be available to support your building, including BC Hydro's multi-unit residential building program. So what does it look like when you sign up? So we're going to ask you to register online. And to do that, again, knowing what your building size is, and knowing what kind of near-term replacement projects that you're looking at, particularly if they enable fuel switching. That's all you need to sign up, just a little bit of information about your building. Ideally, you've already spoken to your Strata Council and you're all on board to do that to start with. If you're eligible, we'll set you up with a phone interview. You'll be assigned a Strata Energy Advisor right from the beginning, and they'll be with you for your entire participation in the program. But your SCA will talk you through all of the different aspects of the program, answer your questions. We'll learn a little bit more about your building. But the most important next step is that you talk to your Strata Council, and that together you document a motion to participate in the program. So basically, you've got support to participate in the SCA program. And then whoever is responsible in your organization will sign a participation agreement. And that participation agreement just outlines our responsibilities to you, but also what we'll expect from you in terms of sharing information about your building and how that will be used. So from the phone interview, once we know a little bit about your building, we're going to do some building benchmarking. So we do this using a tool provided by Natural Resources Canada. It's called the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It is a free tool, so you can go ahead and do this yourself. You can set it up. But what we'll do is we'll collect some building documentation. If you have an electrical planning report, if you have a depreciation report, if you have any other studies or hazmat work that you've had on your building, we'll collect all that documentation. And then we'll get you to sign some documents that also allow us to access your utility bills. And with that information, we'll create a profile of your building and we'll create a benchmark for your building. So we'll be able to see how your building is performing relative to other buildings of the same size in the same climate zone. And that just helps us to understand how efficient your building is and how much potential there is to improve both energy efficiency, but then decarbonize as well. The nice thing about this is if you happen to live in one of those jurisdictions that's looking at regulations for reporting your emissions, ESPM is the first step in meeting those regulatory requirements. So that's already done for you. Once that account is set up, we actually send it back to you and it is yours in perpetuity. So from there, we'll schedule a site visit. So our Strata Energy Advisor will come out to your building. We'll spend anywhere from 4 to 6 hours on site, depending on how big it is. And we're going to document all your building systems. We're going to look at your walls. We're going to look at your heating systems. We're going to look at your hot water and just get a really good understanding of your building. We'll also be talking with folks on site. We'll get to learn a little bit more about what you're seeing as challenges. And interestingly, we're going to document all the systems, but sometimes the real gold is when we start to hear like, oh, my bathroom smells musty, or yeah, there's water damage around my windowsills, or there's condensation in the windows. Those are all clues that are telling us information about how your building is performing. And sometimes those help us really pinpoint where the different challenges are. So with all of that information, we document it and we put it through a software program that we've procured, and it produces a high-level decarbonization plan. So the decarbonization plan is really similar to what the opportunity assessment through BC Hydro is. So it's going to look at your building, it's going to do a high-level evaluation of your electrical capacity and basically tell you what is the percentage likelihood that you're going to require an electrical capacity upgrade at some point in the future. I will say it is not the same as an electrical planning report because this is not an engineering document. This is much more akin to, say, a depreciation report. So it's an opportunity assessment, not an engineering document specifically. In that decarb plan, we're also going to identify, we call them easy wins or quick wins, but these are the projects that you could implement in your building, and they're basically going to pay back in 5 years or less. So these are the things that, regardless of what choices you make, we really encourage you to undertake those basic energy efficiency measures. And then on top of that, we're going to analyze your near-term project and make some recommendations around that and give you some options for kind of an efficiency option, a low carb option, and then a custom option based on what you need in your building. And finally, this is kind of the value add part of working through our program. We're going to give you a pathway to net zero for your building. So we're not just going to look at your upcoming project, but we're going to look at all of the capital projects that you're going to have over the next, say, 20 years up to 2050. And we're going to map out what your opportunities are there to meet your climate action targets of zero emissions by 2050. So starting to kind of help you with that future planning for what you might need to do in your building and how to think about that proactively, which includes setting aside funds, planning for those retrofits, getting those studies done if that's required, but really thinking ahead. So all of this is free. It's fully funded, again, through NRCan, or predominantly through NRCan and the Roadwork Foundation, as well as Zero Emissions Innovation Centre and Metro Vancouver Regional District. So what do you get for that? So you get your energy advisor assigned to you for the duration of the project. Our energy advisors are all trained as mechanical engineers, but have worked in different kind of aspects of buildings, including as facilities managers, as strata property managers. They are also backed by a team of industry professionals that are available and on call to provide kind of more detailed or technical responses based on best practices in industry. And then they also undergo ongoing training. So they're really meant to, our goal for them is to be quite knowledgeable, although maybe not specific technical knowledge to provide engineering services. Even if they are professional engineers, our role is not to provide engineering services, but to help you interpret and understand your buildings better. As I mentioned, you get that decarbonization plan, which has the kind of easy wins, as well as the efficiency, the decarb path, and a custom recommendation for your building based on your priorities. And then ongoing support. So both through this first phase of the project and through subsequent phases for as long as we're with you. You have your SEA on call. You can ask them about new technologies. You can ask them about how to find consultants or contractors. You can ask them about best practices or research that's been done. So we're basically here as an on-call service to support you to make good decisions. That does including accessing rebate programs and identifying which rebates you might be eligible for, and then handing you off to the appropriate contact for those program admins. What we don't do is legal services, so we can't draft resolutions. We don't provide engineering services. So as I said, it's kind of like a depreciation report. We'll make some high-level recommendations, but then you have to go on to the next step to provide the detailed engineering services. We don't have project management, and we don't have direct capital incentives. But as I said, with BC Hydro's recent announcement for their multi-unit residential building program, there are some incentives now in market for stratas. So this is the whole program, which is a little bit overwhelming. So I try to focus on the first stage because really that first phase is where you're going to find out your options and work through those first few pieces. And you can see here, there's the first approval where you make the motion with your Strata Council to participate. And then once we present your decarb plan to you, your Strata Council gets another opportunity to say, is this the program for us? Is this the direction that we want to go for our building? Now, if you do choose the low carbon option, that's the exclamation point, then we can support you through the next phase of your project, which is finalizing your plan. So that includes going to your Strata Council for a resolution to proceed with the project and to set aside a little bit of funds for any study work that needs to be done. So again, the study work is not something that we can fund directly, although there are incentives now in market to support that. So those engineering studies, the feasibility studies, if you're looking at a larger project, that's where those come in. We can support you through that, developing the scope of work. We can help you in soliciting quotes. We can help you applying for rebates. But every step along the way, your Strata Council is in control. And you can withdraw from the program at any time if something comes up. You know, we had in the pilot a building that worked with us, and they were super gung-ho and they were committed and they were doing the studies and working through everything. And then they had their domestic hot water tank blow. They had a major flood in the building and they had to withdraw, which was really unfortunate, but that's the way it goes sometimes. So we were able to pause their application. They actually came back about 8 months later and we stepped back in and continued on. So that is to say that the Strata Council and your Strata building is in control at every stage here. Again, we're just here to support you along the way. If you do decide to go with your low carbon project, we can also help you at an AGM or an SGM vote. So that can be supporting information sessions, providing education materials, just so that everybody in your strata, all the strata lot owners understand, you know, how this project was developed, why you've made the choice that you've made, and what the benefits are to them, so that they, again, are making an informed choice when it comes to that vote. And then once you do approve the vote, fingers crossed, we're there with you for all of the different steps. So we can help you through awards. We can help you understand best practices or troubleshoot things as they're coming up. Again, we're not the project manager, but we can be there to advise you and provide you information directly. We can help you in accessing those financing or rebates. And we can provide you some best practices around implementation and commissioning. We find that commissioning on these projects is really important. Making sure that they're operating properly is really key. And then post-project, through this program funding that we've secured, we can actually monitor the results in your building for 1 full year. So we do this through a third-party provider. It's not us. It's a professional measurement and verification firm. So they're going to make sure that you're seeing the results that are intended for your building. So that includes the energy savings, that includes the climate reductions, and it will also look at the energy, like the cost savings in your building as well. So at the end of that year, we're going to come back with a summary report that tells you what the impact has been on your building and how it's performing. And from there, maybe we've done a great job and you re-up for your next project. Who knows? But that decarbonization plan does give you a vision to what the next step for your building might be. So many of you on the call today are probably at a crossroads. You're probably here because you've got a retrofit coming up in your building and you're trying to figure out what the best path is for you. I'm not going to tell you what the best path is, but if you are interested in the low carbon pathways, if this is something that you're curious about and you're wondering if this is a good fit, I do encourage you to reach out. We're always happy to talk with people and help them figure out if this is the right program for them. So with that, I'm going to pause for questions.
Maybe we can just clarify what's free under the SEA program and what a strata might have to pay for.
Absolutely. So all of the support from the Strata Energy Advisor is free. So anytime you call us, emails, yeah, you're not having to pay for that service at all. And then in addition to that, the site visit, the building documentation, and the decarbonization plan are fully funded through the program right now. So that's 100% free. And then on the back end, if you implement a project, that monitoring and verification, that's all paid for as well. That's part of the service of the program. What the strata would have to pay for is the sort of stuff that you would pay for anyway during a major retrofit project. So if you have to have a feasibility study done, if you have to have kind of a more maybe a preliminary or detailed schematic design done to kind of figure out the retrofit more specifically in your building, that is the responsibility of the strata, as are, the actual project costs. So that's all the responsibility of the strata. But as I said, we can help you access some of the rebates, and more there are financing options coming into the market. So that's something that we're watching very closely. And as those financing options become available to the strata corporations, we'll hopefully be able to help you access those as well.
And of course, these questions can be posed to the Strata Energy Advisor as well through the process. So you've always got that person to bounce questions off of.
One of the things about this is there's a lot of different stuff happening right now for stratas around energy efficiency and decarbonization and programs. So even if you're not eligible right now, signing up for the newsletter just means that you're going to get updates that are relevant to you, instead of sometimes these public announcements. You're like, does it work for me or not? Which is a bit challenging.
Please explain how to register for the program.
Awesome. Yes. So you can go to our website. It's strataenergyaadvisorbc.ca. And right at the top of the page, there's a register button. So that's the easiest. And then you just put in a little bit of information about your building and yourself. And then it goes into our staff for a review. Or if your building is obviously eligible, larger than 4 stories, you'll get an automated response right away, and you'll be assigned an advisor within kind of 3 or 4 days.
Great. Question about what's available for buildings with just electric. Maybe you can talk again about the Victoria Saanich.
Yes. In Victoria and Saanich, where we do have a little bit of additional funding, we can work with stratas as small as 5 units, and look at again, target is still going to be GHG reductions, but we have a kind of a special program there that if you are electrically heated, electric baseboard units, we can support you to switch to heat pumps as an alternative. And honestly, this is switching to a heat pump in an electrically heated building has a lot of benefits. Not only does it add cooling, but it is significantly more energy efficient.
I know you have a slide about the BC Hydro MERV retrofit program. Do you want to pull that up?
Well, first, I'll just put out the caveat that I don't represent BC Hydro. So this is our summary of their programs, but they do have some eligibility criteria as well. It largely aligns with ours with some small changes. It is for whole building retrofits. So it unfortunately can't go suite by suite. So it's not for an individual strata lot owner at this time. Yeah, so they offer an opportunity assessment. So like I said, very similar to our decarbonization plan. It just doesn't have that pathway to zero included. So they offer up to $5,000 for that to be completed by a professional engineer. In the development or project development stage, they have a feasibility study of up to $30,000. And some of this is you get some money up front, and then you get some money if you go ahead with the implementation of those projects. And then they do have some specific equipment rebates. There's, yeah, lighting incentives right now, window incentives, there's solar panels. Like I said, it's pretty extensive. And then they do have a custom projects pathway. And this is just recognizing that if you're doing more than one project, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to calculate what the energy savings or GHG emissions are going to be. So they have kind of this alternate pathway for more complex projects. If your building apply, or if it applies to your building in particular.
I have one more question for you. You mentioned reducing GHG emissions and you mentioned decarbonization. Can you explain level what those two things mean? Because I understand they're different.
Yeah, so GHG emissions are, greenhouse gas emissions, of course, are contributors to climate change. So particularly in our buildings, anytime we're burning a fossil gas or a petrochemical-based product to heat or heat our heater for space heating or hot water, we're emitting GHGs. So does hydropower, by the way, but it's a very, very small amount relative to burning fossil fuels for heating or hot water. So reducing your GHG emissions just means looking for those energy efficiency opportunities where you can bring it down incrementally. When we talk about decarbonization or sometimes electrification, we're really talking about removing those natural gas systems and replacing them with higher efficiency, lower GHG emission alternatives. We're very fortunate in British Columbia that our grid, our electrical grid, is very low carbon because it's predominantly hydro-based. And so that electrification is a really good option here for significantly reducing our carbon emissions from buildings. And that's decarbonization is the bigger term for that. If you happen to live in Alberta, where it's predominantly a natural gas fired grid, electrification might not be the best option. There's different ways of decarbonizing. So it's kind of the nuance of those terms. I know it's very it's very niche to the climate and building space. So
Thank you, Darla, so much for joining us this morning on a Saturday morning, no less. And let's just one more time, if you can tell us the website for the Strata Energy Advisor program.
absolutely. I'm going to pop it up on the screen so those that are more visual like me can see it as well. There we go. So it's it's Strata Energy Advisor BC.ca. That's the website that you can go to register, or again, if you want to review the eligibility criteria, find out a little bit more, or you can email us directly at strataenergyadvisor@zeek.ca.
We have some great information on our website, VISOA's website, that will help you see kind of a high level overview of a bunch of things that are available to stratas, and it'll help you understand what's available to a strata owner versus a strata corporation. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and have a great day.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Wendy.